Thank you again for joining us. My name is Cameron Lanier. I'm the Director of Marketing at Smart on X, and you're not going to be hearing a whole lot from me tonight. Good news for you. I do want to just introduce some things and get us started here tonight, and let you get to the main show here. So let's go to the next slide. All right, some quick housekeeping notes for tonight. There is a recording being made. So the recording, you should have been notified when you entered that it's been being recorded. We will send a recording, an on-demand version. You can watch at your pleasure after this is concluded. It may not be tonight. It'll probably be tomorrow or the next day, but you will receive a email with the information on how to watch this. We do also want to encourage your participation. So we have a Q&A. There's a little box at the bottom of your Zoom screen. It's got a question mark in it. In the chat, things can get lost. And so as people chat, and we encourage you to chat, but as things keep going, we can lose questions there. So feel free to chat, but if you really want a question that goes to Dr. Kofford, Dr. Hogan, or any of our guests tonight, then what we really would ask you to do is put that in the Q&A section so that we can find it better. Yeah, let's go to the next slide. All right, so a little bit about the group here tonight. So we love that Dr. Hogan put this together here, that we have a treaty tonight. And this treaty is specific between the digital and analog worlds of all on X. So Dr. Hogan is joining us with the Atlantic Implant Institute. Dr. Kofford and I are here representing Smart on X. We have some friends, like I mentioned earlier, joining us as well. But tonight, sometimes we hear people talk a little bit about smart denture conversions not being digital enough or what have you. And tonight we want to talk about how no, there's a nice compromise to be made in the digital and analog worlds and how smart denture conversions can help with that. So with that said, I want to introduce some of the people who you will be hearing from tonight. Specifically, again, Dr. Adam Hogan from the Atlantic Implant Institute, and of course our own Dr. Brandon Kofford from Smart on X. Go ahead and go to the next slide. Dr. Kofford, I'll let you introduce some of our guests tonight.
Yeah, so just to kind of set the stage here, everybody. This is a very small world that we live in. The dental industry is incredibly small. So, Dr. Hogan and I were introduced, I want to say like 4 years ago, through a mutual friend who was familiar with smart engine conversions and suggested, "Hey, Adam, since you have the Atlantic Implant Institute and you're teaching this analog workflow part of your Atlantic Implant Institute, why don't you look at smart engine conversions?" And so Adam became like a really big proponent of smart engine conversions, even though he was a full digital workflow kind of guy. And so tonight, I just wanted him to set the stage as to why he, as an educator, um, believes in teaching analog workflows, even though he, as a clinician, does mostly a digital workflow. Well, along the way, I've also met some other incredible clinicians. And so here on the screen, you see Dr. Bruce Smoller out of Michigan, also a very early adopter of smart denture conversions. And he and I have become very close friends over the past, again, 4 or 5 years. Um, but Dr. Smoller has had an evolution from an analog process to a digital process. But then he and I have been talking about some of the struggles that he's facing, as he's a very popular implantologist in Michigan. And so he has a scalability issue that he's trying to address. And so tonight, after Dr. Hogan gives his presentation, we're going to be inviting Dr. Smoller and Dr. Keith Clear and Dr. Sajal Jain into the discussion to share where their journey through all on X, from analog to digital and sometimes from digital back to analog. So Dr. Smoller, I saw you in the attendee list, so we'll be opening the mic to you as we get to that part of the discussion. Dr. Keith Clear and I met for the first time last month. He's a prosthodontist in Denver, Colorado, and he has been doing full arch fixed for eons. Right, Dr. Clear? Um, and he is like an expert in the digital workflow. But he chooses at the time of surgery to stay in the analog world, which is kind of to Dr. Hogan's point tonight that there are some instances where the analog may be the preferred method, and that's why it's worth learning. And then we brought Dr. Sajal Jain in as a new graduated prosthodontist from her residency. Congratulations, Dr. Jain. But she's just going to be sharing with us her first experience in full arch fixed, and we'll be showcasing her first case in full arch fixed as a first year resident in prosthodontics. So that's kind of how we're going to be setting things up tonight. I think it's going to be a really cool discussion, and hopefully it evolves exactly how I envision it, because if it does, it's going to be amazing. And enough from me. This is you all know who I am. So the real star of the show tonight is Dr. Hogan. And so I'm going to give the time over to Dr. Hogan. Again, just a very highly trained, skilled general dentist up in Virginia Beach, and he's been doing full arch fixed for longer than I've had a dental license, quite frankly. So, Dr. Hogan, I'm just going to turn it over to you.
Well, yeah, thank you very much, Brandon. And I'll say from the comforts of my own office here in Virginia Beach, it's my honor to be here. This was a great idea. Put this together, I mean, just probably less than 2 weeks ago, we decided to do this, right, Brandon? So
Yeah.
fortunately, I had a lot of my lights just went out here. Fortunately, I had a lot of experience with smart denture conversions in your product. I have been doing this almost 20 years. I'll take you through some of my slides. Is it my tape? Probably. Um, and it's fine. We set the mood. The ambiance is right. But yeah, we've been doing this about 20 years, but especially over the last 10 years or so, I've been in the full fixed world. I'm in my office because we do this every single day. Excuse me, Cameron, could I get controls to advance the slides, please? Uh, 1 second. I think we had that a second ago.
Yeah, I think that's on me. Let me try that again.
I can get my light now.
Remote controlled. All right, it says, I'm going to try to give it back to you, Dr. Hogan.
Okay.
Remote control, Dr. Adam Hogan. Give that a try.
All right, let's see if this works.
I really wish we had those old school technical difficulties thing to put on the screen right now.
There you go. Yeah, here I am in my office, and my lights are out. But anyway, I live and breathe full arch digital workflow and full arch all day. In fact, today I had a double arch case this morning. Pterygoid zygomas lower, everything atrophic. And then this afternoon, I had another double arch, but with a twist. I did a lower subperiosteal implant placement, and then an upper zygos pterygoids and fixed upper. So we live and breathe this every day here at Full Implant Choice. But yeah, digital magic. Everybody knows me as a digital guy. I teach full digital workflow. Our first class at the Atlantic Implant Institute was full digital workflow, but that's not where it all started. And I think people think, you look at digital magic, doctors think, especially young doctors think, that they can buy all of this equipment on the left side of the screen and magically create these cases on the right side. Like it's all just going to poof out of like thin air. They're going to get this great magic. They tell me all the time that they don't need education and training. They learn on YouTube and social media. And they just think because they're some millennial genius and they were born in the digital age, that if you just give them that technology, that they're going to make great teeth. And they always add this in, Brandon, you'll laugh. They always add in, by the way, I hate dentures. I suck at dentures. So I'm just going to do fixed arch, and I'm just going to do it in a completely digital format. And, it kind of looks like this. You've got your toddler on his bike. He's got, look, mom, no hands. I'm all digital, and I'm just going to spew this stuff out here. And all too often, we see this kind of thing. We see, the bike's broken, the car careened off the side of the road. We got a train wreck going on here. Hopefully, the toddler averted some disaster. But this is the result of, you come into the full arch world and you don't like doing dentures and you've never really done an analog denture or not too many of them. And you just think you're going to poof, this great set of teeth. And too oftentimes it ends in tragedy. Sadly, I pull out this stuff out of people's mouths like every week from somewhere where they weren't learning proper technique. You know, all on four is not just all on four implants. All on four is not all on four is not all on four. And I'm not going to get much into that tonight, but there is a lot that goes into this kind of workflow and this kind of treatment. I've got a little bit of a history in all on four. 2002, 2003, I did a general practice residency at Portsmouth Naval Hospital. And my mentor, Captain Alfano, decided that I was going to do all on four, basically, table clinic presentation. We were going to select a patient and we were going to do the whole thing. Now, I had some help, obviously. I was a lowly resident. I was like, we had oral surgery there, we had pros there. We were all just trying to figure this out along the way. This was the wild, wild west of quote all on four, a term, by the way, that I completely hate. I hate that term. It really dumbs
Right.
down and simplifies a very complex procedure. But we were limited. Look at these materials. Look at what we had for implants, for parts, abutments, just dentures and acrylics. And I mean, we were working with jet acrylic, for God's sakes. So I mean, it was tough out there. But one thing I learned is, this is one of those ask me how I know cases because it was not a big success. This guy was a friend of mine, and he ended up in a denture not too long after we did this treatment. But we learned a lot from this case. You have got to obey your fixed full arch protocols. So that's very, very important. And this is something that I really stress at our Module 1 course, which is coming up with Brandon Kofford and Omniabot in a few weeks. But anyway, I'll get to that later. So I set off on a journey right away in dentistry, and it was largely analog workflow. 2003, 2017, for me, it was mostly analog workflow. I had a little bit of digital in there, 2012 on, but still mostly analog workflow. In fact, this case, this case is an analog case. And I just show this to you to show you what the possibilities are with analog workflow. This guy, look at this bone, look at this occlusion, look at this prognathic mandible and maxilla. And we did this all analog style. And I mean, I think it's probably, I don't know, 7, 8 years old. I can't remember. But look at this. We got smart denture conversions. And we go through and we create this kind of a beautiful smile. So, it shows you that you can do beautiful, beautiful work with analog workflow from the right to the left side of the screen. And we did this for years on analog workflow. And then the digital workflow sort of came in. And for me, it was sort of it was a scalability issue in my own practice. And that's a whole nother, topic of discussion. But I've got a couple of cases to show all you folks tonight. I've got one case to show you that we did it digital and we did it analog, and we got great results. So as we look at our digital method, and I'm a huge proponent of the digital method, but we take all this technology, we take all these records, and we create smiles, and then we go to the intraoperative, we go into the operatory, and we do intraoperative conversions. And this is probably, I don't know exactly this case, about 5 years old, one of our first cases in digital workflow. It's still relevant today. Some of these, we use different little tools, different little parts, different little fiducial markers, but it's all still relevant today. But we're going in and we take these fiducial markers and we do these scans. This is us just placing fiducial markers here. And then, some pictures of the way some of those rudimentary fiducial markers looked. Some people out there in the world are still using these. That's fine. It's not a big deal, but they can all work. We go through this case. We do our intraoral scanning. This is all stuff that at the Institute we teach in basically module 2 of our continuum. And we get these scans. And here, one thing you can see is that analog tools really come in handy in a digital workflow environment. When a guy comes in with no denture, can you make a base plate? Make a wax rim? Do you want to just do a putty bite? Something to get vertical dimension? By the way, Brandon, would you believe prosthetics and occlusion are very important in all on four? I'm not sure if
Wait,
anybody's
what?
ever told. Yeah, write that down. That's a take home.
Oh man, that's a good tip. Tip of the day.
Yeah, it's funny. This little piece of wax it can really do wonders for you. But having the know-how in the analog world really makes the digital world much easier to navigate. So here we are placing our implants, and we do our photogrammetry, and whatever, an hour later, you get some nice teeth. Now, pardon the orange filter there, but this doesn't come at no cost, right? And it doesn't come easily. This was people say completely digital workflow, but we had a lot of analog tools along the way, and we had a lot of analog experience. 2003 to 2012 started, converting over. 2017, I think I was still buying smart denture conversion parts in 2020, 21. I don't know, you can check your records, but
Yeah, for
there's a
sure.
lot of value in these parts and in this workflow. This is that same case. I'm going to take you through a little bit slower here. Um, Analog workflow we did at the same time. We've got a 70-year-old male. He's got a good medical history for this stuff. I'm going to spare you some of the details here for this short webinar, but he's been working on some failing teeth for the last couple of years. Some placing implants, the implants falling out, getting replaced, not really getting anywhere. He's frustrated. He comes to us like this. We've got 4 implants on the top, and I don't know what kind of occlusion that is in the bottom, but it's totally unaddressed, undiagnosed, untreated, which, don't get me started on that. But this, according to him and the records from the previous dentist 2 dentists ago, this was supposed to be a fixed upper all on 4, just 4 implants. It's easy, right? No, that didn't work. Those teeth kept breaking. So they converted him into an overdenture. That kept breaking, and, so on and so forth. And now he's just sitting here with these healing abutments on these implants. And you can see the bone loss on these implants. And then you look at the bottom, and in my opinion, it's sort of disgusting and neglectful. I would never treat a single upper arch with a lower arch like this. Retained root tips. We've got that periodontal disease, that uneven occlusal plane, which, again, Brandon, would you believe occlusion is important? Possibly.
Well, I mean, it's news to me tonight.
Yeah, Brandon. Yeah, check it out. Check Chat GPT. See what they have to say about occlusion and all on
Yeah,
four.
I will. I will.
Which, by the way, you can't learn all on 4 on Chat GPT. AI is very useful for legal and real estate and maybe standard operating procedures, but medicine, not yet. Be careful. Okay, be very, very careful. Anyway, he wants me to do just his upper set of teeth. So we got this situation, and he wanted me to consider saving his implants or just doing the top. But we've got this kind of occlusion, and that line's roughly where I want to leave the mandible. And I say, sorry, I can't do it. If you want it done right this time, we got to do the whole thing. So you can see his long laundry list of diagnoses, and there's probably a couple more you can think of. But the bottom line for these full fixed immediate load patients is functional and cosmetic deficit. Functional and cosmetic deficit. They need a quick change. They need it now. They need to feel better. They need to look better. He comes in with no denture, nothing at all. So, we make him a quick wax rim, take vertical dimensions, which, Brandon, you may be surprised, vertical dimension is my first step all the time.
I mean, it kind of makes sense, right? Where do implants belong if you don't know where the teeth belong?
Yeah, I go, and I'm jumping ahead into a different webinar. I think we're fine. We've got good mood lighting here. One of my
Oh,
friends
cool.
is trying to set the light back on, but anyway, um, where was I? We've got going back. Where was I? What did I say just now? Come back. There we go. Oh yeah, we set with The wax rims. Oh, I was
Vertical
going to say
dimensions.
vertical dimensions, condylar centric vertical dimensions and occlusion. I mean, we just wrapped up module 2 right there. But here we go. I had these articulators. I had them all over the office at one time. I probably had about 15 to 20 of them at any given time. I mean, we were doing this all the time. On this case, we did a quick diagnostic wax up, if you will, digitally, just to see how it would look. And he was pretty thrilled with it. So we have some tools to kind of get ahead and see what he's looking for. But anyway, you can see we go through these steps. In my office, I could send out for a denture, but if I'm going to make a denture, I just mill it, especially if it's going to be a temporary denture or something that I'm going to pick up. So you can see the two worlds overlapping in the peace treaty, so to speak. And there's many ways to make a denture digitally. We can print the base and mill the teeth, or we could mill the whole thing or print the whole thing. There's obviously different ways to go with that, but that's a subject for a different webinar. But here we go. We go into surgery. And when it comes time to do the pickups, we were using these. I mean, we still have these on hand if we ever have to do an analog case or decide that we have a need to do that. Now, in my hands, I would oftentimes convert the mandibular arch first. I know that some people like the upper. I like the lower. I had good stability on both. This isn't really a lesson in how to do smart denture conversions. If you want that, come to the Institute in a few weeks for Module 1, where Brandon and his team will be there to show you how to do a smart denture conversion on the Omnibut. But here we go. We've got everything in place. Smart denture conversion, coping's in place. And then I convert the maxillary arch. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these videos. I kind of want to get to the question and answer session here coming up shortly. But yeah, we convert the bottom, then we convert the top. And then, it's go time. And gonna let those set up. That's just the patient at rest, not in full occlusion. But then we get these dentures, and we've picked up our implants, and we're ready to go, and we're ready to bring them to the lab, and we're ready to trim them up. And this is where all that magic happens. And in my opinion, you can get some really beautiful teeth analog style. I mean, we can make some gorgeous digital stuff too, but with print materials. But the acrylic resins are absolutely gorgeous in the teeth that you get out of denture teeth. They're really pretty. But here we go. Final analog conversion dentures ready for delivery. And this doesn't take long. I said earlier in the segment about the digital workflow, 60 minutes later, 90 minutes later, you've got something. I know that some of these digital companies will brag in 17 minutes you can get this or that, or 13 minutes, but what all goes into that? There's always more. These things, they take 30 minutes, or less. I mean, Brandon, you probably whip these things out in about 7, but easy.
No,
That's probably
I'm
more
not. I'm
for.
not the fastest or the best clinician. I'm averaging around 30 minutes. Dr. Clear can attest how long it took us last time I went out, or when I went out there last month. But hey, Adam, I do want to do a little fact check on you.
Okay.
You ready for this?
Yeah. What's up?
I typed into ChatGPT. This is the prompt. Dr. Hogan suggests that occlusion is important in full arch fixed cases. How important is it, and how do I manage occlusion? So the response was, Dr. Hogan is absolutely right. Occlusion is critical in full arch fixed implant restorations, arguably one of the most important factors determining long-term success. So even ChatGPT knows how important occlusion is, and that's one of my favorite things about the smart denture conversions approach to the analog workflow, is being able to establish that occlusion perfectly in your pickup capture of the components. So anyway, just wanted to throw that out there. ChatGPT, even an artificial intelligence knows how important occlusion is.
Well, I'm going to ask you to copy and paste that answer and send it to me, because I'm going to show it to my wife that I was right today. All right, I'm going to let her know. All right. Thank you
You
for
were
that.
absolutely right. That's more than just right. I mean, absolutely right.
Oh my God, I'm going to call my mom too. All right. Well, good. So we established that condylar centric occlusion at the proper vertical dimension. All right. So I said it. All right. Right there. That's paramount. But anyway, 30 minutes. We got these nice, beautiful teeth. There they are. Unenhanced photography. I'm no photography expert, trust me. But here we go. We got nice pickups. This is the first set of teeth. And he looks great. I mean, this stuff looks pretty spot on in the bite. I mean, the occlusion looks pretty amazing for a first set of teeth. And you can compare the two side by side. They both pass the test, right? So here we go. I mean, you can get to both easy um, with either method. But you know, are you completely digital? Are you completely digital? People say, am I completely digital? I mean, I can't say I'm completely digital. You don't just take a bunch of scans, intraoral scans, and drop them in a computer and just design the perfect set of teeth. It takes some kind of tools, whether it be, leaf gauges, tongue depressors, cotton rolls, wax rims, putty bites. There's always analog tools. Oftentimes we take impressions, and let's face it, I need a denture quality impression. I need a denture quality scan. A lot of times people think I'll just scan the teeth and they'll make this beautiful smile. No, do you have peripheries? And how easy is it to get the peripheries on an intraoral scan? A lot of times it's easier just to take a impression and then we scan the impressions and so on and so forth. Or if we were going to do an analog conversion, we'd mill a denture and do a pickup. So there's a lot of analog tools. I'd say that preoperative records, we use some analog tools most every time. Okay. And we need that analog experience. I think that's the number one drive home message. In our module 1, we teach that you have to understand analog. Why? Because, I've seen digital designers. Let's look at laboratory technicians. I see people that learn digital design, and if they haven't burnt their fingers on hot wax, waxing up a denture, it takes them a long time if they ever catch up to that previously analog tech. And I will say the same thing in my observation of dentists. Dentists who have learned how to do analog dentures and over dentures, learn their occlusion through that. And, they've learned how to wax a denture. They've learned how to make wax rims. They have a Bunsen burner in their lab. They learned how to move teeth and set teeth. They always make better digital clinicians. So, that's one of my key take home messages for you is don't jump over the analog workflow. There's a place for both. You've got to do, in my opinion, you've got to do 100 or 50 or at least 20 arches in analog before you decide to move on. And, and that's not all, because some offices, I know colleagues that are doing full arch every day and they still use analog workflow. And they just find it easier to incorporate into their practices. It's easier to train the team to do it. And, they can delegate more of their responsibilities, or they can move through their surgery a little faster. Now, some of them might take that analog pickup and later convert it to a digital format, which we can show you how to do here. But there is value in the analog workflow. So I'm going to kind of wrap it up a little bit here, coming towards the end. People always say, when am I ready for full arch? I think that you need to know how to load implants immediately. I think single anterior immediate load is part of the key. And I think understanding full arch occlusion from a removable standpoint is exceedingly important. I mean, I've got a subperiosteal over here on the left side. That's probably from 2005 or 6 or 7. My 2 implant overdentures, bar overdentures, and dentures. There's dentures in that slide too. There's value in all of that. My surgical restorative journey started with the single implants and the quad implants and the overdentures and the bar overdentures and this one up at the top with the 50 implants in it. Not all mine, but that's one of my patients that I inherited and took over. But that I call, the mesh implant dentistry model, 1 implant kind of per every 2 teeth and only doing a quadrant at a time, and only what hurts the patient or bothers the patient currently, and taking all that into this full arch journey. There's an evolution to it that it can be valuable to take your time and go step by step and really learn how to paint by the numbers and really start with an analog workflow. As I wrap this up, I gotta give you my little idiom here that patients live in surgery, but practices live or die in prosthetics and business. And what do I mean by that? Everybody loves to do surgery. Everybody wants to come into full arch just to say, I'm a full arch surgeon and I can place 4 implants at a time or 6 implants or 12 implants at a time. But success is going to be based on your ability to sustain prosthetics and to strategize your business. That's where your long-term success is going to come into. So don't overlook prosthetics and don't jump into digital prosthetics without also understanding analog prosthetics as well. Now, my last disclosure, I tell you, you got to be careful who you take advice from because I am a jarhead, a former Marine, as you can probably see from my swords on the scabbard on the wall behind me. But yeah, you got to be careful because that's where I hail from. And with that, I have a few more slides to share with you, but I want to thank you for listening, and really as I turn this over, I want to emphasize that I fully believe in analog workflow, especially for beginners and for some of you guys just to carry it on. And I know Bruce is going to talk about, I think he's going to talk about scaling his practice. He's also a digital guy, but scaling his practice with analog workflow. Now, a little bit about your learning and your journey. I think you need 3 things to be successful in full arch. I think you need education. I think you need experience. And I think you need recent and ongoing repetitions. Okay. So you need to learn it. You need to get some practice doing it, and you need to keep on doing it over and over again. And I'll add into that mentorship as well. So we have a curriculum at the Atlantic Implant Institute, or the AII, really for everybody, beginners, intermediate, experts. I've had, GPs that have never done arches come to our courses. I've had oral surgeons, prosthodontists, periodontists say it was the best full arch continuum and courses they've ever taken. And we've got testimonials to prove that and vouch for that. But we've got module 1 is core bootcamp fundamentals. Brandon, your team is going to be a guest at our course here at the end of July. We still have a few seats to sign up for that. This is didactic training, obviously. It's type it on exercises and hands-on there. It's cadaver training, right? And it's live patient observation and both prosthetics and surgery, all on 4. So you get it all there. Number 2, we've got advanced prosthetics and digital workflow. Module 2, we're going to really delve into how to do proper prosthetics and proper occlusion and condylar, centric, and vertical dimensions. We talk a lot about that. We'll talk about some challenging cases in there as well. And that comes with an exocad module as well for full arch. And then I think we skipped one here. Did I go too fast? There's module 3, which is remote anchorage implants. And I think it does skip one, sorry. But we have remote anchorage implants, which again, didactic, hands-on, typodonts, and cadavers again. And then this is the full implant experience. You and your team can be our guests here at Full Implant Choice, and we can coach you on everything from sales and surgery to prosthetics here. Oh, there it is. It's one out of place. Core remote anchorage, all right, where we learn all how to engage bone in different parts of the maxilla and subperiosteals for the mandible. Something I do remote anchorage definitely every day, but I'm still doing subperiosteal implants. And we have this in a continuum format where you can take all modules 1, 2, and 3 for a bundle price and get the whole thing. And what else follows here? Sorry, short delay. FP1, we have an FP1 class. So our friend Knife Sonata is going to be here in October to talk about FP1 training. And I have a business class as well to talk about how to strategize and build your company, your practice for success. And the next one of those is coming up in September. So I think that we are just about there at the end of my section. I'm going to hang out here for questions. Brandon, I want to thank you for your support. I'm really looking forward to having you and your team down here in 3 weeks for core bootcamp fundamentals. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Adam. And as far as like a place to get continuing education, Virginia Beach is pretty amazing. So really excited to join you up there. Thanks for the invitation. And also thank you for championing what I truly believe in as a, prosthodontist classically trained in the Air Force. Uh, I just believe that we get better. We understand occlusion better. We understand teeth in space better when we've mastered analog processes. And then we use digital techniques to just make us more efficient. But the real learning of teeth in space, I think just there's something profound
Yeah.
about the analog processes. So I really appreciate you teaching that and collaborating with us on this peace treaty. Uh, so this image right here, for those of you in attendance, one of these arches belongs to a board certified prosthodontist with 10 years post residency experience, and the other one belongs to a first year prosthodontics resident. So I'm sure you're all thinking that the one on the left hand side of the screen belongs to the board certified prosthodontist with 10 years post residency experience. But that looks terrible. I wouldn't expect that to come from the board certified prosthodontist, but it is. It's mine. It is my last conventional converted arch. And the only saving grace to that arch is that it lasted, it survived, it didn't break. But Dr. Jane is in attendance today. She is she was a resident down at Nova Southeastern, and she did her research project on, or her master's project. I guess it wasn't a master's project, but her research project was with smart denture conversions. And so her first year in residency, she did her first denture conversion ever. And her first attempt at a denture conversion is way better than my last conventional denture conversion after 10 years of experience. So, Dr. Jane, can you just kind of tell us about your experience with this analog workflow?
Hey everyone. Um, so yeah, I was pretty intimidated to do this conversion. It was like Dr. Kofford said, it was not just my first smart denture conversion, it was my first conversion ever in life. And I had watched other senior residents do traditional conversions in my program leading up to mine, and I knew like all the problems that could happen, about like how long it could take. I've seen some of my residents that their prosthesis just broke, like in the middle of them trimming their prosthesis during the conversion process. So I was kind of intimidated, and I had like read the manual for a smart denture conversion over and over. I was one of the first people to do smart denture conversion in my program. Only one other resident had done it. So he was sitting next to me, and basically he was like my guidance because none of the faculty knew about smart denture conversion either. So kind of just went for it. And yeah, surprisingly, it went super well. It was super easy. It came out really good. The patient was happy. It didn't take long, and it just kind of went exactly as the manual said. So I
And
totally
this is you as a
everyone.
first year pros resident. That's pretty
Yeah.
amazing.
First year, first conversion. I did it complete, all the work was done by myself. I didn't have anyone helping me like to do the work. So it was super easy and definitely a game changer.
So, and the learning curve there for you, like after you did this one, did you do any others?
I did. So this one, I think, like, when you're in school, you have a session to see a patient. So I took the full session to do this conversion. But now looking back, like, it can go so much faster. Now I can do it in 30 minutes. Um, and also, I would say like some things that I think about now that a lot of people maybe don't realize, like smart denture conversion isn't just limited to full arch. So whenever I'm doing like a 3-unit FPD and I have a provisional shell already made, sometimes I'll still use smart denture conversion. Or if I had a lot of FP1 cases that came after this where patients had, maybe like 5 implants, and 3 of them would be to fixture level, and then the other 2 would be on multi-unit abutments. So I would go first with smart denture conversions to do all the multi-units in one go. And then from there, like doing the fixture level conversions would be so much easier. And then what else can I say? So on this case, since it was my first conversion, I had seen like all these other complications that other people had. I was really nervous about it. And so I didn't do this case immediate load. But now looking back, for anyone out there who's doing their first conversion, if you're going to use smart denture conversion, I would definitely say challenge yourself and do the immediate load after. And you'll definitely have enough time to do the conversion.
Awesome. I wanted to, and thank you, Dr. Jane, for sharing this. I want to just point out here, this is kind of going to Dr. Hogan's point earlier. Dr. Jane, why a maxillary complete denture on this particular patient? Why not fixed?
So mainly due to the finances for this patient.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Bingo. Yeah, so for anybody who's like, oh, I'm all in. I want to do full arch fixed, but I'm not good at dentures. I hate dentures. I don't want to do dentures. To Dr. Hogan's point earlier, and Dr. Hogan, you can chime in again, but
Yeah.
there are people who just can't afford to do fixed for both arches, and they're content with a maxillary complete denture, and they
Yeah.
just don't like the looseness of a lower denture. So you fixate the lower denture.
Yeah. Yeah. I think,
And
and to speak on the case I showed earlier, I know that gentleman was resistant to doing his lowers because of finances. Now, truth be told, at the end of the day, he could afford it. He just didn't want to afford it. And
right.
two dentists, two dental offices, and I think there was a specialist involved as well. They were like, okay, you don't want to do your bottoms, fine. But occlusion, like you have to control that occlusal plane of vertical dimension. And even if I had a patient who couldn't afford the other arch, I would give them a free denture to do the case before I do a single arch every time.
Amen. Amen. I give so much dentistry away just so I can do it right.
Yeah. You have to,
So
or you get failures, and it comes
yeah,
back to bite you.
yeah. Really appreciate you highlighting that. So Dr. Jane, one of the things I love about this picture or these three pictures here is it highlights what I focus on, what I think makes full arch fixed a successful outcome. There are three things. I focus on the cameo contours, the intaglio contours, and teeth in space. Or sorry, occlusion, right?
Mm-hmm.
So teeth in space is going to be where the teeth belong in the vertical dimension, as well as how the teeth interact with the opposing dentition. And so if you can just master those three things, then full arch fixed is very predictable and you get very, very good outcomes. And so here, Dr. Jane's intaglio contours are very nice and hygienic, very cleansable. I do not like seeing concave contours in the intaglio, which she doesn't have. You see that the cameo contours are nice and sleek, so I'm sure the patient tolerated these contours quite well. You got the multi-unit abutments pretty much centered in the posterior occlusal tables, and in the anterior, it's pretty much in the cingulum or the area where the cingulum would be. So that allowed for very sleek contours. And look at that occlusion. Dr. Jane, did you have to do much adjusting to that occlusion to get that?
Not at all. It was amazing.
So
Everything was picked
yeah,
up and altogether.
so that's what I love about the Smart Edge Conversions analog protocol is you end up getting beautiful occlusion just in the process of doing your pickup. So as far as analog processes go, I just love the predictability of the outcome as well as the predictability of the procedure itself. Dr. Jane, thank you so much. I want to loop Dr. Smoller and Dr. Clear in. So are you guys mic'd? Are you ready to? I'm going to ask you to unmute. Both of you are muted.
Yes. There we go. Are we good? How you
Dr.
guys
Smoller.
doing? Are
Awesome.
we on? Yes.
Okay. So thank you, Doctors Smoller and Dr. Clear, for being here. Dr. Smoller, first, I just want to talk to you about you identified smart denture conversions early on. You were an early adopter. But recently you've gone more of a digital workflow. How long have you been doing your digital workflow?
So I would say that we've been digital at least 5 years, 4 or 5 years, something like that by now. It was really during COVID where I just decided, what the hell? We went from 3 offices down to one. This was going to be my last hurrah as far as what I wanted to do, how I wanted to do it. And at least now all my headaches came from one location instead of from three different ones. And part of that was getting this funky thing called a Yomi, going fully digital, hiring our first CDT, and really exploring that world. And, to Adam's point, you think buy all this stuff, not really know exactly the depth of what you're doing, and Envision Tech E1 for $40,000, where it came in a big, huge crate. Oh yeah, baby, we're rocking and rolling. Let me tell you, I thought I was it. I mean, normally I think I'm it, but I truly did back then. And it's a progression because whether or not you want to recognize it, realize it, and actually understand there are a ton of benefits in a analog environment. And I can't tell you how many times we've had flubs, mishaps, different things occur, all because you weren't paying attention to details in the digital workflow scenario. And not that any grave issues would happen, but to Jane's point, when you have complete control and you're doing things with the smart denture conversion, the smart on X, you are there being able to set everything how you want with predictability. And as an aside, most of the days when we had multiple arches, not that that's the goal per se, it wasn't with the digital workflow. And to me, hurrying up to wait around, even to this day, I have to deal with. So I really look back to the process of learning Smart on X, how we were able to implement it, how we were able to expand and train my team with those, was just fantastic. Where I would just walk by, I would be doing a different case. I was in the area, and before they converted and picked up, we went the upper arch first. Um, and I say, "Yep, looks good. Yep, let's do it." And it was really nice being able to scale certain aspects of the protocols right then and there was wonderful.
But you bring, speaking of scale, so you are mostly a digital workflow right now, but you also have a problem that you're a very popular clinician in your area, and you've got a lot of patients who are looking for treatment from you. And so you reached back to me. I want to say it was like 2 or 3 months ago, maybe
Yeah.
longer. But you were describing to me kind of your thoughts on scalability, and then we'll bring Dr. Clear in to address this as well, because I think this plays into where he's kind of settled in. But talk to us about the scalability issues that you're running into, and
So
what your thought is about how you could address those scalability issues.
so there's only one metric that I'm aware of you can't change, which is time. There's only 86,400 of them in each day. There's only so many seconds, so many minutes. And a number of months ago, like you mentioned, we're looking at our ability to utilize how our sedation days and how many patients we can help. And we realized that there was some inefficiencies of a couple of hours per case. And if you take a look at it, when we were really cranking with two teams and surgical rooms and trying to really kill ourselves in 22, like most people, when business was really the best that it had gone post-COVID, um, we really were running into a problem where you have these nice processes of the digital workflow, but what was bogging us down was really understanding that the speed, the efficiency, the timeliness of the Smart on X protocol was so much greater than the cost of the actual componentry. So that when you really look at, unless you have your own design house inside, unless you have, a larger operation, but there's a process. It's not ready, fire, aim. You there's a cycle of action. So for us, we were getting bogged down on the time element, and we decided recently, I said, it would actually be more efficient and better productivity to skip the digital workflow for time of surgery, save the time, and go the all on X route. And it was like a light bulb that went off. It's like, oh my gosh, for a couple $100 per arch or what have you, you could get one or two more arches in. So why wouldn't you take another look at what had been the way to do things previously with the digital workflow? And colleagues and buddies would have a nice recovery room where they hang out, watch Netflix on TV. So now we got cable just so patients could hang out and wait, and comfier chairs or recovery area. And it sort of was just justification for not understanding how best to be efficient. And obviously, if you're not doing a good enough job in whatever protocol or system you're doing, nothing's going to work well in your hands. To Adam's points, that's why he's got a great institute to help people understand what they need to be doing. But
Them save the frustration of trying to learn on their own. I mean,
Yeah.
oh my
it's so
gosh.
nice to have a Sherpa to help you through the Mount Everest of the digital workflow, right?
Yeah, and with his military background, he keeps the gorillas back in the jungle. So, he's it's good having him on our side.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bruce. I appreciate the vote of confidence.
Yeah, and so Dr. Smoller, how much of the computer work do you do yourself? Are you designing at the computer? Are you doing the 3D printing and the post processing, or do you have team members doing that for you?
100% team members. Um, I'll review different revisions, things like that, review our digital workflow for the Yomi. But I'm definitely a guy who wants to empower my team around me.
Yeah.
Um, and that's just how I am. Yes, I understand certain things as far as turn the printer on, let it warm up, different shades in the tub, and I'm being slightly facetious, but unless you're a one man or one person show, you really need to have a team. And that's really my thought, is that when I would have my team do conversions for me, and I had a new associate is watching and seeing my assistants do the conversions a traditional way, and they would do it well. It just is gratifying to me, gratifying to empower the team around me, because the better they feel and the more confidence they have, the better they're going to be able to communicate their job, their purpose, their higher calling in our organization. It just, to me, makes sense.
I totally agree with you. However, that was kind of a segue to Dr. Clear, because Dr. Clear, you are kind of the opposite, as I understand it. Now, keep in mind, Dr. Clear is he's a fast friend of mine. We met on a webinar. When was that? About uh, maybe April. And we set up a time for me to go out to his clinic out in Denver, Colorado, which was beautiful. Loved that experience. But we totally nerd out together. And Dr. Clear, tell me more about like your approach. Tell me more about your approach to Full Arch Fixed and the digital workflow, and who you outsource anything to.
Yeah.
Well, when I started, there wasn't any digital flow available. I think the first encounter that I had, um, we did electromilling of overdenture frameworks onto cast bars. And then Atlantis came out with CAD CAM abutments. So that was my first venture into digital, but I wasn't doing any of the designs myself, just approving designs online. And then everything else was analog, to the point that I have a lab in my own house. I owned 3 casting machines, 3 induction casting machines. Total nerd out on dentistry. My wife is also a dentist, so we just talk about this all the time. All my best friends are lab technicians and other dentists, so I just enjoy it. But we were doing a lot of full-on X arches. My last name is Clear. Clear Choice started here in Denver. I started before they did, but they had a lot more marketing than I ever did. But at one point, we were up to doing 500 arches a year, and it was all analog, other than we had bars made digitally through Nobel Procera was doing the bars. And then we just decided we had seen enough digital going on. We decided we needed to get into that. And we ended up just jumping in full feet. We normally scheduled 4 to 6 arches a day. That day we had 6 arches. We just went fully digital, and it was tough. That was a lot of scanning protocols, learning photogrammetry. And we probably should have started out with a few simple guinea pig cases. When going fully digital, we just jumped in thinking we know what we're doing, but there was a lot of learning curve. But it was exciting because, much like writing a paper on a typewriter and having one-off copies each time, with our digital workflow, it was like a word processor. You could save and you could reprint and you could make changes and edit. And so there was a lot of beauty to that. So we just, like I said, we jumped in full feet. And even in the surgical, as Dr. Hogan mentioned earlier on, you had to put in fiducial markers in order to see where you were at before you took all your teeth out, and you reflex your flaps and you lose all your reference points. So you needed to have that in place. And then at that time, we were sending it off to independent designers that were tied to our laboratories. And then you'd have to wait usually an hour to an hour and a half to get all of that information back and then put it on your digital printer. And we wanted to make sure we weren't waiting. So we purchased 3 digital printers. So we were good to go, had them all warmed up, everything ready to go. But we were waiting on the designs. And then once it went on the printer, it was at least 35 minutes to print, another 10 minutes to clean it in isopropyl alcohol, another 5 to 10 minutes to add gradient to make it clinically acceptable. So we were another hour into the appointment by the time we got the design back from the designers. And this whole time, we're paying anesthesia to keep the patient subdued, or we're waking them up and getting ready to resuppress them. The surgeon was walking around, the prosthodontists are walking around. It was a frustrating time. And we were just trying to see what we could do to get it faster, try different printers, different materials, stronger materials. We just had issues. And I worked with another periopros, and we were both just going, if we were doing conventional, we'd be done by now. So we started looking at ways where the conventionally heat processed denture material is much stronger than any digital material that we have that can print in the time that we would have to allowable. And that's still the weak link of trying to go fully digital. We either had to design our prostheses much thicker, and that didn't give the patient a realistic trial of what things would be like. They were always complaining about the bulk. If we streamlined it, we had to cut off cantilevers or other things. And that meant that the patient didn't get to experience the cantilever, or that tissue and cheek and tongue didn't get to adapt to those. So we just went back to doing conventional pickups. And again, we were doing just normal temp cylinders, hogging out the denture, trying to do as good as we can to get those multi-units to where they were in the line. So we weren't drilling some out of the buccal and some out of the lingual, and trying to seat a denture over divergent temp cylinders was not fun. And that's when we got interested in the smart denture conversion. And it made it so easy. And to his credit, I also got involved with the OmniButt, and that just kind of fixed everything even more for me, because now you could instantly control the angulations of your multi-unit abutments and then go back and pick it up with the smart denture conversion. And I sling a lot of acrylic. I've treated acrylic deficiency syndrome for many years. And with that, I've gotten good and quick with acrylic. Brandon has an option where there's pre-measured vials. Even though I didn't need that, that sure was handy just to dump a few in and mix it up. And then the occlusion was spot on. We even did it on my own mother. So that's how much I trusted this process. And it was quick, it was easy, and it's I think having those analog workflows, digital is just a tool that allows you to do the same things, but it's not one or the other. And I couldn't live without having both. I think eventually they'll have digital technology where it's quicker. The print technology will be faster, more reliable. It's better than it ever has been, but it's still not quite good enough to rely on it 100%. And so now we still do a lot of arches, but analog dentures and doing the smart denture conversion is definitely a part of our normal workflow.
Yeah. Wow. I really appreciate you sharing that. So, you brought on in-house design
Yes.
as
So that's
an
another thing is
attempt, right?
yeah, as a control freak prosthodontist, I went and got the training because I got tired of waiting. I didn't know if my offsite exocad designers were on lengthy coffee breaks. So I could design everything and I could have a design ready in 20 minutes instead of an hour or an hour and 15 minutes. I could have it ready, but still the print time was slow. And then I do 95% of all of our designs. We farm a few out if I'm out of the office or I'm not available. But I've done enough to where I'm pretty quick at it. And then we ended up, as we were mentioning, Dr. Smoller was talking about other staff members taking on parts. I have staff members. Everybody was surgically trained. We started as an oral surgery office that added prosthetics. And then we shifted over time to where we're now a prosthetic office that added oral surgeons to the office. So I think we're starting to do it a little more the right way. Everything is pros driven. And I think that helps with our implant placement as well as overall design. But the staff members, we were in crunches, so we needed help getting those done. And also the staff members, they're just so smart and so gifted that, just doing one job all the time got old for them. So they started jumping in. They print, they colorize, they glaze. And then two of them decided to take on the exocad, which we had two in-house dental technicians that were skilled, but they had a hard time getting around the mentality of shifting to digital. So they're not with us anymore. But my assistants stepped into places where my technology or my technicians weren't able to do. And I found that also many dental technicians, they know teeth placement and tag-load designs, things like that, but they have a hard time jumping to the computer. And we have a lot of young, very smart people on computers, but they haven't worked in dentistry, so they don't understand cheek biting and tongue biting and class 2 relationships and bilateral balancing and things like that. So getting that sweet spot of people that can do digital design as well as understand what the ultimate goal is, which is getting people teeth that they can function, speak with, chew with, have cleansability, hygiene, all those things. It's a sweet spot. You got to get all these things aligned. And at least in my hands, it's not a digital only world. That's for sure.
Yeah,
I appreciate
I
you
agree.
sharing that. So it is the funniest thing. People, so Smart on X will go to, and this is partly why Bruce and I are such good friends, is wherever Smart on X is exhibiting at a trade show or whatever, there's Dr. Smoller. He has more continuing education behind him than I think any person I've ever met. But at these trade shows, people will come by and they just like, oh, well, I'm only digital. And I just laugh at them. It's like, I would never brag about my toolbox being limited to one tool. Right?
100%. Yeah,
Digital's a
in a
tool.
way, it almost shows your ignorance.
Yeah.
Because never say never. There's so many opportunities. We threw a couple implants in and a revision, and it was like 4 o'clock. What am I going to do? Have everybody wait? And so we go in the cupboard. Okay, let's get out our Smart MX, and we made it work. We're waiting for a few things to come in, but yeah, it was like a huge savings, and sure, the design was able to angulate things in a vortex screw and things like that, but without that, couple of aces up your sleeve, you're missing out on being able to give more stability or have staff stay late, and time becomes the critical feature.
Yeah.
And to me, you cannot beat the time efficiency of the Smart on X protocol.
Yeah.
Yeah, you brought up a very good point, Dr. Smoller. Implants still fail despite being well trained, right? So if you have a full arch fixed prosthesis in the provisional stage and an implant fails, you can simply replace a new implant, pick up that implant site with a smart denture conversion tie base and separable fastener, and have that revision done in like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
So like
Yeah.
don't limit yourself to, well, I'm only digital. No, that's why I love Dr. Hogan's approach to his institute. There's this continuum, and he sees that value of teaching and empowering you with an analog workflow for the many reasons that he discussed, so that you can handle real life clinical situations where I just don't have time to wait for the full digital workflow
Yeah.
to produce this one little outcome that I need.
Yeah.
So it's not an either or. That's why we have this peace treaty of it's an and. These are
And you have
Yeah.
to
tools.
keep in mind that it's not just the printing and scanning, it's the photogrammetry. So there are
Yeah.
times where, I mean, we've got two different units because people have different mouths and different abilities. And so it isn't as quick as you would want. You know, when it isn't the quickest is when you don't have the time.
Yeah.
Right.
It's Murphy's
sure.
Law.
Bruce, you got some
Murphy's
really great points, and Keith and Dr. Jane as well. I mean, Bruce, and I love what you say about time. We're not getting any younger, we're not getting it back. And it's very important. It's one of the biggest cost and expense factors in your practice and people's practices, and they don't even realize what it is and what it means to them and how much money they waste in time and how much of their life they burn in that. But it's like you have to learn how to build with your hands before, I think you really like that hands-on feeling of learning occlusion and learning how to put things together. I think that it's invaluable, and I liken it to, like, I had a superintendent on a job once on a construction site who learned construction management, and he learned design of houses, and he learned all this stuff. And he was terrible at the project of building of this project because he never wielded a hammer. He never touched a saw. He doesn't know the capabilities of the equipment and what to do, and he didn't know how to pivot. And I think it's like asking AI. These young guys, they come out and they want to learn everything in a digital world, and they're like, it's like asking AI what a tree feels like. It can
Right.
describe it, but it's never actually put it in its hands. And so it's like it's this invaluable experience. And I see you're ready to move on, Brandon. But I listened to a podcast last week where a teaching institute said, oh, we're going to close our analog education because everybody's just bored with that, and everyone just wants to get into digital right now, so we're just not even going to teach analog anymore. And I heard that from another prominent educator. And here I am starting at digital education and going, man, after looking at what everybody's doing coming out of the digital workflow class, I think we need to go back and teach some analog fundamentals so that they really get it. I think it's so important. So yeah, Brandon, sorry to interrupt, but you three, Dr. Keith, Say Hall, and Bruce, great points.
Yeah. So, and before I let Dr. Smoller and Dr. Clear go, I do want to just get them on record. There's so much that they have to share, and this little webinar wasn't enough to give them the platform. So I want to commit both of you to at least a 1 hour webinar where you will share more of what you have to offer us. Dr. Smoller, is that a firm yes?
Oh, I'll have to try to get out of my shell. I'm such an introvert. Yeah, I have such a hard time public speaking. But for you, Brandon, and your sister, absolutely.
That means a lot. Okay, great. So that's a firm yes. Dr. Clear?
I'm totally a firm yes. I love this stuff. And
Okay,
anything I
great.
can do to help or learn, teach somebody else, that's a joy for me.
Awesome. And I do love working with like-minded people, Dr. Smoller, Dr. Clear, Dr. Hogan. Just we know that we've been given so much by way of education. Dr. Hogan, I loved your shout out to Captain Alonso. Alonso?
Alfano. Yeah. Alfano.
Alfano.
Right.
Um, and you know, you taking what he taught you or what you learned from him and giving it out to so many people who have gone through your institute, I just think that's a great way to honor those who have mentored you. So just kudos to you, kudos to Dr. Smoller and Dr. Clear for doing the same thing. All right,
Thank you.
so we do have another webinar coming up at the end of the month. This one's kind of exciting. A lot of the people have resisted the use of the Omnibut because it wasn't compatible with their digital workflow. So speaking of digital workflows, we have Dr. Art Mireles from Instarisa. He's going to be teaching the use of Omnibut in a full digital workflow. And this was one of the reasons why I went out to meet with Dr. Clear last month, was using the version of the Omnibut that allows you to use whatever it is you're currently using for your full digital workflow. And we'll also be showing that off at Dr. Hogan's Institute in a couple weeks. So anyway, that webinar is July 30th, same time. The Omnibut Unleashed.
Awesome. Love it.
The
Okay.
extraordinary Kimberly Smith put that together from our marketing team. She deserves kudos
Yes.
for that.
We love Kimberly. She makes us look good. All right. So, everybody, this is the end of our webinar. Thank you so much for attending. You do get promotional benefit from attending. So take advantage of that coupon code. And then we are available for question and answer. Cameron, have you seen any questions coming through?
We have. So first of all, Alejandro Diaz wanted to make it known that ChatGPT is aware of who Dr. Hogan is. So after you plug that in, he wanted that to be known. So I thought
Thank
I'd
you.
give you the little
I'll
shout out there,
I'll
Dr.
tell my wife.
And your mother.
You know you've made it. You know you've made it when ChatGPT knows who you are. I mean, that's pretty impressive.
Scary.
Vlad had a couple of questions. I know we're over time here, and we thank everyone who has stayed thus far. And panelists, we'd love for you to stay. We understand we're at time, and if you need to drop, totally understandable. But we do have a couple questions. Vlad has some deep questions for us. He's got a four-parter here. All right. When converting the lower arch first, what specific techniques or reference points do you rely on to confirm that your occlusal plane and midline remain accurate throughout the pickup process?
Yeah,
That's a
good
Dr.
question.
Hogan question.
Someone's going to have to limit Vlad.
No problem. So I will preface this, and I saw the comment. I used to do my maxillary arch first, before all my patients were awake and before pterygoids. But after putting patients to sleep, and I've got a nasal tube and a deviated nose, and the eyes are taped and the face is covered, and it gets hard. And I do a very wide reflection of flaps. It gets very hard to orient the maxillary arch at that point in time. And then if you add in pterygoids, you lose a lot of landmarks that way. And I found that the mandibular arch, I get pretty good stability with the retromolar pads. Even if they were incised and reflected partially, they would fall back and I'd get a pretty good rest there. And then I'm a big believer in prosthetic setup mandible first. Even in dentures, I like to set my lower incisors and my lower molars first, functionally speaking. So I would make sure I have good, seats on my retromolar pads, and I would have a good lip support. I'd have a good incisal display behind the lower lip, and then I could fixate that mandible in there. And then when I go to pick up the maxilla, I get the condyles into retruded, what I believe to be a condylar centric occlusion and vertical, and it would be a lot more successful. Again, since I'd been doing all of my cases except maybe like 3 since 2017 under general sedation, it's been easier for me if I ever did an analog pickup that way.
Do you do anything to the intaglio of the mandibular anterior area to help you establish that vertical position while you're doing a pickup? Or is it just the retromolar pads that are indexed, and then you just kind of use visual cues to
Yeah,
get their?
I'd say it's more visual cues because you got an ample bone reduction. My bone reduction protocol for an FP3, it's common to remove 10 or 12 millimeters of bone in the mandibular anterior. So you lose a lot of reference that way. So again, it becomes retromolar pads seated back, the two retromolar pads, and then watching that occlusal plane and seeing where it rests behind the lower lip and holding it steady. I got pretty good at it through that. Again, because I lose a lot of the face orientation through the general sedation process.
Yeah, interesting, cool.
Part two, if you discover after pickup that the prosthesis has a cant or the midline is off, what is your protocol to correct it chairside without compromising the fit or occlusion?
Digital
Is that a
workflow.
what digital? Yeah, that is. If you do merge the two worlds, it gets very simple. Bruce has a point. Not being all of one or all of the other, but digital workflow, a quick scan and a redesign, in an hour or a day. But yeah, that you got to make a decision clinically where your vertical dimension is, which arch is accurate. Do you want to break out and repick up one or not? Is it clinically significant? I mean, these are all clinical decisions you need to make on each individual case. So I don't know. It's kind of a longer, maybe there's a longer answer that, but you got to take each case, individually, I think.
I think part of that, I would add to that, one of the ways that I set that up with the patient from the very beginning, and this is probably where Dr. Hogan and I are a little bit different, because Dr. Hogan, like, his patients will leave with a beautiful smile or else, right? That's like a non-compromising position. Whereas I know I'm not good enough to get it right every time. And so I buy grace from my patients by explaining that on day of surgery, I have 5 priorities. Priority number 1 is to keep you alive. Priority number 2 is to keep you comfortable. Priority number 3 is to get you some implants. Priority number 4 is to get you some teeth. And priority number 5 is to make those teeth just absolutely gorgeous. Now, day of surgery, priorities 1 through 4 take priority. And then after the integration of your implants, I can hyper focus on priority number 5. So that just buys me a little bit of grace if I don't get everything absolutely correct. Like if I do
Yeah.
have a little bit of a cant or my midline's off, then I just make my patients kind of put up with it for 3 months until we get into the definitive phase. Whereas Dr. Hogan, I know I just have heard him explain this, or I've had buddies tell me that Dr. Hogan explains that his patients do not leave with teeth that are not beautiful, perfect.
Well, I'll agree with you in that you set expectations always a little lower than you think you could deliver. A big part of success in full arch is selecting the right patients, reasonable patients, and setting their expectations in a reasonable manner. I by no means say, hey, today they're going to be perfect. In fact, I told both my double arches today. I said, hey, look, today you're going to have teeth and they're going to be great, but I'm never 100% happy. And if they're not great, they'll be great tomorrow. So you set those expectations. But anybody in this business, and Keith, I mean, Bruce, you guys have been at this, longer than me probably, but you know, anybody who says they get it right on the first try every time, I mean, you haven't done it. You probably haven't done it even twice yet, or you're lying. You're blowing smoke up my rear end. Like you know, it's
That
a
that happens a
complicated
lot to
issue.
you.
Huh?
That happens a lot to you.
Yeah, right. I hear it all the time.
Yeah.
It only takes me 2 revisions and I'm done every time. I'm done in one half the time.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
You
30,
know.
30 minutes an arch.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I do arches in 17 minutes. I love that
Yeah.
discussion.
Yeah.
yeah, me too.
Okay, well, I'm going to limit it to Bruce's earlier point. Let's go to number 3 and 4, and I think Vlad's additional questions might have to wait for another webinar. What are your top strategies to minimize chair time and improve efficiency when converting a full arch, especially when working with less experienced team members?
What are my
Um,
say that again?
yeah.
Sorry,
How,
one
how do
sec.
you make things work well when your team around you is not as trained?
Oh, well, I mean, just train your team. I mean, everything starts with your team. If you're not delivering and your team's not all on board, you can't do this kind of dentistry well without a good trained team. So you got to take the time to train your team, empower your team to get work done, hold them accountable when they don't do the right, when they don't follow the steps or do good work, and pick good team members that already recognize that that they didn't do an optimal job and are willing to correct it with initiative. So it's all in team selection. You can't do this work without a well-trained team and do it efficiently, in my opinion.
And to that point, you need someone who they shouldn't be so anal or such a perfectionist, but they have to understand a job well done. When you get a digital workflow back and there's a mismatch from the pick flags or your photogrammetry, something is off. And it's like, okay, did they not make sure it was completely seated? So just because you say, wow, it's less than 50 microns, no, that's if it's done right. But do you know if it's being done right? And
Right.
that's where you have to um, inspect what you expect as far as the training so that
Sure.
they know what's needed. And you just can't say, oh, go ahead and take care of it, because you have to make sure that certain aspects of the digital workflow or any Smart on X process is done well. And that's the difficulty, is that if the doc doesn't know what's needed, who's there to train the team?
That's right. I wouldn't ask my team to do anything that I haven't already done myself. And you have to be able to correct and recognize mistakes. So you got to stay involved. You can't just, walk away from it and expect them to do it. But at the same time, half the time I can, because they're well trained and they're conscientious and they want to do a good job. So, but yeah, expect what you inspect, right? Bruce, that's a great military phrase. I love that one.
Yeah,
I'm
so
full of
we
them.
actually we do a training course for a large DSO, where we have the doctors and their assistant or technicians come with them, because we believe very strongly that this is a team sport, and the technician needs to know the doctor's role, the doctor needs to know the technician's role, and by role I mean like what um, what they should be doing in this process, right? And so they need to be able to read each other's minds. Why did the doctor do this? Why did the technician do this? You need to know that. But what's been disappointing about some of those training programs is when the when we do the trainings and we're doing hands-on and the technician's doing their job, the doc is off somewhere else, taking a coffee break or doing whatever, and is not like really engaged. And so, to Adam's point, don't ask your team, an assistant or your technician, to do anything that you don't know how to do yourself. So, if you're at a training like at the Atlantic Implant Institute, for example, um, don't ever say, oh, well, I'm never going to do this. I'm just going to have my assistant do this. No, learn it, master it. Then you can delegate it. But don't delegate until you've mastered it. That's
Amen.
my approach.
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right, one more here. So, how do you design or modify the conversion prosthesis to reduce fracture risk and make hygiene easier during the healing phase?
Oh, that might be a good Dr. Jane question.
I was just gonna say I had a few thoughts on this. So for the hygiene, definitely like convex on the intaglio surface. And then also I think for hygiene, you really just have to spend the time at the end of the appointment with the patient. Like you check it first with the super floss in between and make sure you can get the floss all the way through, and then have the patient demonstrate it to you. And then another thing I could do for the hygiene is like usually I see the patient in a week after, and when I remove the interim prosthesis, If there's any spots on the intaglio surface that are dirty or that I feel like I need to trim more, I do that right away. And then usually that has always worked for me for the hygiene. And then to reduce the risk of fracture, I think Dr. Hogan brought this point up a few times. You almost have to be like obsessive about the occlusion. So if the occlusion's off somewhere, that's usually going to lead to fracture of the prosthesis. So that's number one. Second, definitely by doing the smart denture conversion, you're already like strengthening your prosthesis in comparison to doing any other sort of traditional conversion where you create these through and through holes. And also one
What
thing,
about combination of denture material and pickup material?
yep, so that you'll read my article coming out soon. But there are different combinations of pickup materials and denture-based materials that you could use to make your prosthesis stronger. So what I found in this one of the studies that I did was that sometimes the pickup material could be weak, and that could be leading to fracture of the prosthesis. But I also think that like a traditional denture and Unifast trad pickup material has worked relatively well for most people in terms of
Okay.
like all the materials that you would use for conversions. And then another thing to add, like in the post-op instructions, you can tell the patients to start out by eating a soft diet. That means foods that you can cut with plastic utensils and then take it from there. So maybe like on the first day, right after the conversion, don't just jump straight to like the toughest foods to eat. Start out soft and then work your way up.
So
Plastic
can I just,
utensils.
yeah,
But
yeah.
that's
Can I just,
exactly my line for soft food. What's soft food? Anything you can cut with plastic utensils. I say that all the time. I wanted to
Yeah.
add, Dr. Jane, great response. But Brandon, small hole technology, right? Smart denture conversion, small hole. That's important. And hygienic surfaces, I want to back up to. They come from proper vertical dimensions and proper bone reduction. And I look at my early cases that had bad surfaces, and oftentimes it was inappropriate VDO, or not enough bone reduction, but also not letting your tissue tell you where to put the intaglio, but creating an intaglio as if the tissue was almost irrelevant. That's a big one for me to add on.
yeah, and I would also foot stomp the importance of multi-unit abutment selection in
Yeah.
its impact on your intaglio design.
I heard
So,
you have a cure for that. You can change, you might have something coming out.
yeah, you know what? Stay tuned
It's
for
hearsay.
the Omnibut digital workflow. No, I mean that's really where that Omnibut concept came from, was just being frustrated with the limitations
Yeah.
of a straight 17 or 30 and trying to optimize all the important features of a full arch fix, the intaglio contour, the cameo contour, and the teeth in space. So this is a really great question, and we could spend a whole webinar on just that question. Dr. Clear, when you have a practice and you're doing 500 arches a year, how important is it to you to limit the amount of fractures in that type of a practice?
Oh, that's probably the biggest thing, because it's easy to do things same day of surgery and have a good outcome when the patient's numb and you're wheeling them out in a wheelchair, but it's when they are chewing on it, breaking it. And those are always things that are added to the schedule that weren't on the schedule when you got there in the morning. Somebody
How
broke
much do you
something, it's sharp.
how much do you charge for a repair?
Well, on those, like when it's right after the surgery, those are non-income generating. And if anything else, your fear is that it's breaking between the distal implant and the next one in front of it, because now you have a Lone Ranger, a whole quadrant hanging on one single implant with a fractured prototype. That's a nightmare. You could be starting all over in that quadrant and setting the clock back. So those repairs just are horrible. And as Dr. Jane mentioned, with the through and through hollowing out the technique, and as Dr. Hogan said, if you're starting out with minimal bone reduction, you're stacking the deck toward failure. And so you learn those things. And so with your smart denture conversion and that Omnibut, where you can actually, change the angulation so you're getting it more in places that can handle the screw channel and you're keeping your buccal and lingual contours in good shape, that just really stacks it towards success.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, because a practice where you're doing 500 arches a year, how many is that a month? Let's say,
Yeah, it's almost 30, I think, if I think about
so
it.
30 a month. And let's say you have a 25% fracture rate. So what's 25% of 30?
Well, that's huge. And that's when we pulled back out of a lot of the full-on digital workflow. We were having so many break, and we tried all the various ones. We were using just whatever resin, whatever salesperson said that was the strongest, toughest one, we would try, and we were not always having the success that the salespeople would claim. So going back to the analog, heat processed denture material has been around a long time, especially if you get it to those thicker, 12 millimeter, 15 millimeter thickness. If you're keeping your access holes small, if you're not going to town, and ruining it, and if you're using good bonding materials that bond your pickups to your original denture, then we've had minimal fractures of those. And you have the opportunity to put prefabricated bars or other reinforcements inside just to minimize that on those patients that coming in that are going to have problems. You have bruxism patients, heavy clenchers. Those ones you definitely want to stack the deck and have restorations even a little bulkier than you'll plan for the final version. You want to have all those things in place because starting back over at the implant level sucks. And so everything you can do just to get toward that finish line is going to help not only your daily schedule, but your bottom line financially.
Awesome. Hey, I just wanted to thank you so much for your answers, and thank you so much, Dr. Smoller, Dr. Clear, Dr. Jane, for being here. Dr. Hogan, thank you so much for putting that presentation together in like record short time. I did not give Dr. Hogan much lead time for this webinar. So the fact that he pulled that out was just amazing and just kind of a testament to the educator that he is. So thank you so much for doing that. Dr. Hogan is going to be doing that training course July 23rd and 24th. Are those the dates, Dr. Hogan?
It is. We start at noon on the 24th on a Thursday, and we finish with cadavers on Sunday. So it's a 3.5-day course. I'm very much I want to be a responsible educator. I don't think you can learn this in 2 days, fly in, take 3 hours or 8 hours of class, and then place implants. We're going to learn by the numbers, make sure you don't miss anything. So Thursday at noon until Saturday with a regular program, and then cadaver training on Sunday.
That's awesome. And Saturday is when you and I actually get to team up, right? Where you'll
Right.
be doing the surgery, and then I get to show off the Smart Denture Conversions clinical and laboratory protocol.
Yeah. I can't wait to see you in action. It's going to be in the octagon, and Bruce has been there. It's going to be a fun time.
Absolutely.
This is why we needed the treaty before we did this in person, right?
That's right. No, it'll be we're going to honor the peace accord. No worries.
Yeah.
So, but what I do love about that patient demonstration is it addresses the question, two of the questions that I think were asked. One is the efficiency. And so doctors, you're going to see in this course on Saturday, you're going to see how we efficiently do our pickup and then go to the laboratory and do the contouring. And Dr. Hogan has told me that so long as hemostasis is good, we'll be able to do an open flap pickup, which will expedite me getting to the laboratory and starting that work so that by the time he finishes, if he's going to do any bone grafting or placement of any membranes or PRF or whatever, and suturing, usually I can be done by the time he's finishing up closing or shortly after he finishes up closing. So that's that efficiency that we're talking about. So you'll be able to see how all of that flows together, and that's the value of the type of training that Dr. Hogan has designed, so that you can like do it or see it in the laboratory, then you get to see it on a patient, and then you get to do it on a cadaver. So
Right.
it's a really extremely valuable program. So I hope there are those out there listening to this webinar who look into it a little bit more. And I hope to see you there on the 24th.
Perfect. Yeah, be a great time. You don't want to miss it.
Cool. All right. Well, Cameron, is there anything else?
No, we've gone well over time. We should let people go. So
Isn't that kind of like our like
that is kind of
mo
par for the course at this point. So we're just a talkative bunch. So
all right.
which anyone who knows these doctors knows that's definitely true. So with that said, thank you all for joining us. We really appreciate, especially those of you who've held on here to the end. Please take advantage of that coupon code or buying smart denture conversions, save 15% for the next couple of weeks. And we also want to absolutely give that shout out to the Atlantic Implant Institute. Please make sure you check out their upcoming course and you can see Dr. Kofford and Dr. Hogan in person and get to work with them side by side. So thank you all for joining us and have a great night.
Take
Thank
care.
you, everybody.
Thank you, Cameron. Thanks, Doc. Thank you,
Thanks,
Keith,
guys. Have a good one.
Bruce, Dr. Jane. Thank you.
Be in touch.
All
Bye.
right. Bye-bye.